Welcome to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Hello, Heisman.
Chuck Conrad with a kickoff. Roy has a strong leg, end over end. Sanders takes it 1 yard deep in the end zone. Up the middle, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. He's at the 40, he's at 45, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Cowboys. He did move. Just like last year, a same start.
And the winner is...
Here's your host, Chris Houston.
Happy 2024 Heisman Week, everybody. Our 4 Heisman finalists were announced on Monday night on ESPN. As you probably know by now, the 4 finalists are Dylan Gabriel, quarterback from the University of Oregon, Travis Hunter, wide receiver / cornerback from the University of Colorado, Ashton Jeanty, running back, Boise State University, and Cam Ward, quarterback from the University of Miami. The 90th Heisman Trophy ceremony will take place in New York on Saturday night, televised by ESPN. The presentation begins at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and we should know the winner just before 9 o'clock. And I want to make a note about the finalists this year. It's often a misnomer out there that the Heisman Trophy just goes to the best player on the best team of the country. And if you just look at the results of the Heisman, you can see that's not really the case. While it's true that these circumstances are often aligned where you get the best player on the best team winning the trophy, it's certainly possible that for the second season in a row, the Heisman Trophy winner will come from a team that is not even in the playoff, which just goes to show you how closely our Heisman electorate pays attention when it comes to deciding who is the most outstanding player in college football. Anyway, it's Heisman week. The 4 finalists will make their way to New York City Friday over Saturday, take part in some great activities. They'll get to meet some college football legends, pick up some cool swag, including a Heisman commemorative watch from Axia Time. Of course, we'll be in New York City too and be talking to the Heisman Trophy finalists and bringing you a full report of the Heisman Trophy weekend on next week's episode, which sadly will also be our season finale. So on this, our penultimate episode of the season, we have Archie Griffin, who was on our very first episode last year. He is going to be honored in New York City for the 50th anniversary of his first Heisman Trophy. Of course, he'll be back next year to be honored for the 50th anniversary of his second Heisman Trophy. Always great to catch up with Archie Griffin. After that, we'll have Neil Everett, longtime ESPN anchor and friend of the Heisman Trophy. Also, Cory McCartney, who has written books about the Heisman and has covered the Heisman Trophy for many years. He really knows his stuff when it comes to the Heisman. In addition to this show, be sure to check out our bonus pod, Heisman 101, up right now. Everything you need to know about the Heisman ceremony and Heisman voting process. Definitely a great segment for those of you who are really into the Heisman in college football. So we're going to take a brief break and we'll be back with Archie Griffin. We're celebrating 90 years of Heisman excellence at the new Heisman Legends Brunch on December 15th, the day after the Heisman ceremony. Join the Heisman Trophy family at this historic gathering as we celebrate 9 decades of Heisman history while featuring an extraordinary lineup of Heisman winners from the 1960s to today. We'll have an exclusive meet and greet for our guests to connect with Heisman legends, followed by a celebratory brunch. This is your chance to be part of an unforgettable afternoon. Not only will you hear our Heisman winners' stories firsthand, you'll also support the impactful charitable work of the Heisman Trust. Secure your tickets now for this special event. Space is limited and you won't want to miss it. Go to Heisman.com to reserve your tickets today.
Hey guys, this is Barry Sanders, the 1988 Heisman Trophy winner, and you are listening to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Archie Griffin, the 1974 and 1975 Heisman Trophy winner. Welcome back to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Chris.
You know, there's a special day coming up next week, and that's the 50th anniversary of the first of your 2 Heisman Trophy victories. Can you believe it's been 50 years already?
Oh, it's really hard to believe that it's been 50 years. You know, time passes so fast. I mean, it's just incredible. Yeah. But I tell you what, it's been a good 50th year. I've had a lot of fun this year, doing a lot of exciting things, and it's been great.
Well, it looks like you haven't aged a day since in the last 50 years, that's for sure. You're one of the great ambassadors of the Heisman, but this is the first time in 25 years that you will be specifically honored on a Heisman weekend. What are you looking forward to the most about this year's event?
Well, I'm looking forward to what I look forward to every year, and that is getting back with my Heisman friends, my Heisman partners, and having a good time in New York City, and bringing in the newest Heisman winner. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of the event, and that's always exciting.
Yeah. Of course, this year there's no nighttime Heisman Gala like we've been used to. We're going to a Heisman brunch. What do you think of the new format?
Well, it remains to be seen. To tell you the truth, I'm looking forward to it. I've always enjoyed the nighttime event. It was always something very, very formal and something that you look forward to. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this luncheon or brunch goes. I think it'll be just fine, though. I think it's an opportunity for a lot of people to get together again and bring in the new Heisman winner. And with the playoffs, the way that they're going to be this year, it's kind of hard to have that night event and have all those candidates stay around for a period of time. So I think this is the best thing for the Heisman.
Yeah. One of the finalists this year is Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty. Like you, not the biggest guy, but tough as nails. What do you think about him as a back and what he's accomplished?
Oh, Ashton's been phenomenal. I mean, when you think of the yardage that he's gained, he's over 2,000 yards. He's had about 5 games or so over 200 yards. It's just been absolutely incredible. I think he averages almost 8 yards a carry. So, what he's done this year has been absolutely phenomenal. And I'm really looking forward to meeting him because I like seeing guys about my size, and I just like to see running backs do extremely well. We hadn't had a running back to win that thing in a long time, so it'll be interesting to see how he ends up in the voting.
What do you think about his running style? What are some things he does that you think are just outstanding as a running back?
Well, I like the fact that he can certainly make you miss, but he can also run through you. He actually has outstanding speed because he's able to break the long one and take it to the house. So those things are all very, very impressive. But the main thing is he's been consistent. I mean, again, you get 5 games or so where you're over 200 yards. You've had a absolutely fabulous year, and he's done that. And he's been consistent all year long. So I think he's a very, very exciting one. But got a bright future ahead of him. And, who knows? He may be the winner this year.
Right. High praise indeed coming from Archie Griffin. Of course, Travis Hunter of Colorado is also one of the favorites to win this year. What do you think of his accomplishments playing both ways in this age of college football?
Well, what he's done is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, when you think of a person that goes both ways, and he's pretty much full-time both ways, and he's been outstanding on both sides of the ball. I mean, I think he could be All-American as a receiver and All-American as a defensive back. I mean, he's just been absolutely phenomenal. He's one of those guys that are what I would say is in rare air, because not many people can do that. Very few will even attempt to do that. And he's had a fabulous season, just unbelievable season. So I expect that it'll be a good vote between Ashton and Travis.
Yeah. Did you ever play both ways, like early in your career, maybe in high school or in Pop Warner?
I played in Little League football. Yes, I played both ways. In high school, I played a little bit both ways, not a whole lot. I mostly played offense. Again, what Travis is doing is he's pretty much full-time both ways. I mean, I don't remember the number of snaps he's had all year long, but I know it's been a phenomenal number. And when you can do that, and you're conditioned enough to be able to go both ways and be strong both ways, that's rare air.
Yeah, it seems like as a receiver, having to, your muscles are the muscle memory of running forward and side to side, and then the playing corner and the muscle memory of backpedaling. It's got to be a great strain on the physique, right?
Well, it is probably a great strain on the physique, but I'm sure at Colorado they're certainly training him how to make the most out of doing those things and the type of exercises and conditioning that would allow him to be at his very, very best doing all those different things he's doing, because he's doing different things. Yeah. I mean, the mindset he has to have is one of those phenomenal mindsets that says, hey, I got to be here, ready to catch the ball, which is a good thing because sometimes you hear about defensive backs not being able to catch the ball, but that's not a problem with him because he's a wide receiver, so he's used to catching the ball. So, I mean, I think it's fabulous for him to have the opportunity to go both ways, first of all, but to do it at the level that he's doing it, just almost unbelievable.
Yeah. How do you think you would have fared if you played some corner back in those days?
If I'd have played some quarterback those days, I probably wouldn't have been as effective on offense the way that I was effective. So that's the give and take of going both ways. Which one's going to suffer?
Yeah.
And from looking at Travis, neither has suffered.
Was there anybody you played with either in college or in your NFL career that you thought, wow, there's a guy who could be like a Travis Hunter or play both ways, someone who's such a great athlete, so mentally tough, so well conditioned that can do that?
Yeah, there's a couple people that you would think can do that, but you really don't know because they didn't do it.
Yeah.
And you didn't really think about doing it during my time in college or in pro. I know my younger brother, Ray, he played running back for a period, and then he switched to defensive back, and then he came back to running back for a while at Ohio State. But his main position was defensive back, and when everybody was healthy at the running back position, he went back to defensive back. So I know there's people that can do it, but I don't know that there's a lot of people that can do it game after game after game and do it even in one game.
Yeah. Of course, the main reason we talked about the change this year in the gala is due to the new expanded 12-team playoff. What do you think of the playoff expanding, and how do you like Ohio State's chances of winning it?
Well, I like the fact that it has expanded and you're giving more schools opportunities to win a national championship. I think that's a good thing for college football. I think everybody's excited about it, but regardless of how many teams get to go in, there's always going to be somebody upset that they didn't make it in, and I'm sure it would be. This year will be no exception. But Ohio State's chances, I feel pretty good about Ohio State's chances. I think we've got an outstanding football team. We had a couple hiccups this year, but I think that's going to make the Ohio State team more excited about being in the playoffs. And I think it's going to keep them more focused about winning these games in the playoff, because now it's one and done.
Yeah. Well, you were one of the great Ohio State teams in that great era. 4 straight Rose Bowls, actually.
4 straight.
4 straight
That's
Rose
right.
Bowls. Sorry. I corrected myself. I know my history. Back then, I looked at the rankings, December 2nd, 1974, and the 12 teams back then wouldn't have looked too far off from what today looks like. Oklahoma, Alabama, Ohio State, USC would have been the top 4. And then you had Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State, Auburn, Nebraska, Baylor, Maryland, Miami of Ohio as the not Power 5 team. Looking back at the teams from that year, which team do you think would have fared best in a playoff like today if they had it back then?
Oh, do you mean? I mean,
tough question. I know. Like, look,
of all those teams that you mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you don't remember how those teams were, but in your memory of like, what teams do you think? I guess maybe it's kind of the question is like, what teams did you respect the most back then from that group that probably would have been a tough out in a playoff setting?
Well, to be honest with you, Chris, all those teams, because you talked about Oklahoma, they were a great team. Southern Cal was always a great team because we played them all the time. Certainly, what was it? You say Auburn? Name some of those teams again. Auburn.
There was Auburn. There was Notre Dame, Penn State.
Penn State. I mean, those were all great teams.
Yeah.
So, I respect all those teams. And in a tournament like that, great things can happen. Yeah. And you can be surprised. I mean, you mentioned Miami of Ohio. I remember Miami of Ohio during that time, and they were an awesome football team. I really remember they had some great players on that team, and the MAC, they were a very strong conference at that time.
Yeah, I meant to ask you when we were talking about Ohio State's couple hiccups this year. In this age of NIL, you have a lot of players coming in, and they're only in for 1 year. Being an offensive guy, and you were there for 4 years in your offense, running those plays. You must have run those plays, the the off tackle plays 1,000 times under Coach Hayes. You must have, the linemen must have had every step down to the T, the detail, the level of detail you need to run the plays perfectly. But you get guys coming in, maybe they come in the fall or summer, and they're learning how to play together, and they're learning the plays. Is it maybe the reason you see a hiccup like we saw with Ohio State this year, even though there's a tremendous amount of talent? Is it harder when you have the talent, but maybe they haven't played together for very long and they haven't been in the system very long? Is that the challenge in this era, to try to get these offenses, especially because offense is a little bit harder to learn?
Right.
Is that like the big challenge is getting the players who are just coming together for maybe 1 year to get them to play together to a certain level?
I do think that is a challenge, but the fact of the matter, football is football, and these young men, they know the game of football. They're smart. They can pick up things fairly quickly, and they can get it done.
Yeah.
I mean, football is football. Football is blocking, tackling, running, passing. That's what football is.
Yeah.
And usually, on different teams from an offensive standpoint, if you're a receiver, you pretty much running the same route trees. You just got to know the different terminologies, things of that sort. But it's always better to have a team that has played together for a long time. They know each other. They know what each other will do. That's always very, very helpful. However, these guys are smart. They know how to play the game of football. They've trained. They're in great condition, and they can go out and play. It's just learning the new terminologies and things of that sort that is kind of can be confusing at times.
Yeah, we talked about the transfer portal, and that topic there, and of course there's NIL and there's advancements in training and strategy and technology. How do you think all those changes that we've seen recently might have impacted your own career if they had been in place during your time?
Well, I don't know, because my goal when I went to college was to get a college education. I mean, that was what I wanted. That's what the game of football did for me. I come from a large family, 6 brothers and a sister, and my parents couldn't afford to send everybody to college, but they wanted everybody to go to college. And we were able to do that through the game of football. And at least my brothers and I were able to do it through the game of football. And my sister, she did it through track and field. But that gave us the opportunity to get the education. So the main thing that we were going to get was the education.
Yeah.
Football really was secondary. But the fact of the matter is, we wanted to be the best that we could be. And I wanted to be the best that I could be playing at the Ohio State University. Yeah. And Ohio State University gave me a great opportunity to do all the things I want to do, get the education that I wanted, as well as play the game of football. Yeah. Now, with some of these other things that are in the game now, where NIL and things like that, well, that certainly would have been helpful at the time. But I'm the type of person that, I don't want to look back at what it would have been, what it could have been, because it wasn't.
Right.
And so I just don't spend a lot of time thinking about what could have happened if NIL was there and all the other things with transfer portal. I certainly would not have transferred. I was on some great teams at the Ohio State University. Why would I want to go anywhere else when we were having such success there? So, I don't really think back at that, because it just did not happen.
Yeah, I guess if all those things were in place, you might have won a couple Heisman trophies, huh?
Well, that's
not much.
That would be the same.
Not much better you can get than what you did. Yeah. So take us back to that day in 1974 when you won your first Heisman. What do you remember most about the moment when you found out it was you? Who was with you, and what was their reaction?
Wow. First of all, let me just tell you what back then. It was the day after our Michigan game that we got a call from the Downtown Athletic Club telling me that I needed to be in New York the next day, which would have been a Tuesday, and that they were going to make the announcement of the Heisman Trophy winner. Now, at that time, they gave me the impression that there was going to be me and a couple others there, and they were going to make the announcement.
Tricky.
Well, I got on the plane, got to New York, got to the Downtown Athletic Club, and found out that it was only me there. and they made the announcement that I won the Heisman Trophy. And as you can imagine, I was very, very excited. Certainly, to win an award like that was phenomenal. But I'm the one that will always go back to tell you that I was very fortunate because I was on a great team at the Ohio State University that made me look good enough to win a Heisman Trophy. But it was truly exciting. Certainly was surprised that I was the only one there when they made the announcement, had a little press conference when we got there. Then the next Monday was when all the festivities took place, right. The dinner, the whole works, and my family all came to New York, and we had a great time in New York celebrating the winning of the 1974 Heisman Trophy. I mean, it was very, very emotional for me. Just to, it was my first time in New York. Our whole family was there, and I remember looking out into the audience, and tears just came to my eyes. I just started crying because could not believe that it was me in this situation, and then seeing all my family there, knowing that they were extremely proud to be there with me. I mean, it was phenomenal. Yeah. It was phenomenal. I mean, that's the best way that I can explain it. It was truly outstanding, great for me, great for my family, great for my teammates and coaches. I remember I had my high school coach even came, and certainly my family and some teammates and coaches. It was just something that that you dream about.
Must have been an amazing celebration, to be sure. If you can go back and speak to the young Archie Griffin accepting that award in 1974, what would you tell him about what lies ahead for you?
Oh, wow. Well, I would tell him, after having done it, I would tell him that your life changes. Your name is no longer just Archie Griffin. Your name is Heisman Trophy winner, Archie Griffin. Yeah. And then after that second one, I would tell him that your name is two-time Heisman Trophy winner, Archie Griffin, because that's what happened. The Heisman Trophy changes your life. Again, you're not known as what your real name is, but people always put in front of your name, Heisman Trophy winner. Yeah. That's the impact that award has on individuals who win it. Yeah. And it's remarkable. It's special. And I know every Heisman Trophy winner that wins that award greatly appreciates it.
Yeah. You mentioned your family members being there. Were there particular lessons from your parents or your family members that have stayed with you over the years, perhaps even influencing you, how you approach leadership or challenges on the field?
Sure. When I was coming up, my parents were big inspirers in my life. They had things that they would like us to follow, and that first one was to always trust in God. The second thing was for us to get an education, a college education. And the third was for us to participate in sports. And they wanted to trust God first because they always said if God's in control of your life, he can help you in any situation that you might find yourself in. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And again, secondly, they wanted us to have that college education because that was something they didn't get. And their dream was for all 8 of their kids to graduate from college. And then that third was for all of us to participate in athletics. And they wanted us to participate in sports because sports kind of rounds a person out. It teaches you a lot of lifelong lessons and values to live by. And so those were the priorities that they had for us. And I've tried to live by those priorities. And I feel like I've done pretty well with that for the most part. And it's been a good thing for me.
Yeah. You've been to so many galas over the year, met so many winners, both when you first won the awards, the old guys that were there at the time, through the years. Are there any moments from all these events or interactions with other winners that you cherish or that were particularly meaningful to you?
Well, every year is meaningful, Chris. I mean, just to get back together and laugh and tell stories and tell lies and all those kind of things that we do when we get there.
Yeah.
It's a blast. I mean, it truly is. It's a lot of fun. And that's what I look forward to when I go back, seeing these guys and seeing the new guys come in and the younger guys come back for the occasion.
Yeah.
Those things are great memories to have, and gives you something to look forward to each and every year. And to me, that's what it's about. It's a fraternity, as people say all the time. It's a fraternity. And we love each other. We enjoy being around each other, and it's a great time to get together.
Of course, next year you're going to be honored for the 50th anniversary of your second Heisman, making history all the time, the first man to be remembered twice. You're, of course, going to give a speech this year. Have you thought about the problem of needing to leave some material for next year too? Like, how are you going to divide that up?
Well, we'll take it as it goes. I'm going to take care of this year first, and we'll worry about next year. But again, I look forward to it. It's been exciting. This whole year, Chris, has been exciting. This 50th year, the Ohio State University, they've done a phenomenal job of celebrating my 50th anniversary of winning the first Heisman Trophy. Got the opportunity to dot the I with the world famous Ohio State marching band.
Amazing.
To Biddle.
Amazing.
The best damn band in the land. And that's something that not many people get the opportunity to do. I know that John Glenn did it, Bob Hope did it, Coach Woody Hayes did it, and I had that opportunity to do that. That was very, very special. I had the opportunity to go out to Pasadena this year to the Rose Bowl, where they dedicated the Heisman Legends Walk, where they're honoring all the Heisman Trophy winners that played in the Rose Bowl. And me having played 4 times, they gave made a statue of me, and I was able to bring my family out there to dedicate the Heisman Legend Walk and that statue. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. And then 2 weeks later, after that, I came back to Ohio State, back here to Columbus, Ohio, and the Ohio State University put a replica statue at the Ohio Stadium. And that was just a phenomenal feeling, because I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and this happened right in my hometown. And, it couldn't get any better than that for a guy from Columbus, Ohio, who went to the Ohio State University.
I can't believe it. Was that the first time that you dotted the I?
That was the first time that I dotted the I at official Ohio State football game, and that's when it really, really counts.
Gosh, what?
I mean, I've dotted the I on other occasions, but not at an Ohio State football game, and that's the official dotting of the I.
Right. Well, it's about time that you were able to do that. I gotta understand what took them so long. So, you should be doing it. You should be doing it every game.
Well, Chris, I don't care how long it took them. They did it, and I'm very, very proud of it. And it was a wonderful, wonderful feeling to dot the I in front of those 106 or 7,000 fans that were at Ohio Stadium that day at the Akron football game.
I can only imagine how that must have felt. Well, Archie Griffin, congratulations again on the 50th anniversary of your first Heisman Trophy. We'll see you in New York City. Looking forward to hanging out with everyone there, and we appreciate you coming on.
Well, thanks, Chris. Appreciate you having me, and it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Did you know that the Heisman Trophy Trust has donated more than $20 million to a huge variety of charity-based groups via its Heisman Trophy Fund for Youth Development? That's right, the fund has helped countless charitable organizations that uses sports to engage underprivileged young people in educational activities. If you are part of an organization or know of one that would like to apply for funding, visit Heisman.com and click on the charities link at the top of the site.
This is Archie Griffin, 1974, 1975's Heisman Trophy winner, and you're listening to the official Heisman podcast.
We're here with the one and only Neil Everett, the man, the myth, the legend, the way of life, friend of the Heisman Trophy. He will be working the Heisman again this year, doing the private Heisman welcome reception on Friday night, and the Heisman Legends Brunch, which is starting this year. He'll be doing the pre-reception for that. Neil, welcome to the show.
Hey, listen, I'm glad to be invited back to the show because that means I've been invited back to the Heisman.
Definitely. We had you on the show last year around this time, had a great time at the Heisman itself again. And the last year was the last year, as far as we know, of the original Heisman Dinner Gala. They're going to this brunch kind of event. What do you think about this switch, and what do you anticipate it's going to be like?
Well, I think it's going to be really interesting. I think it'll be fun. It'll probably be a little more laid back, I think, than the dinner. It'll be festive. It's going to be interesting. And for the folks out there who wonder why they're doing it, it's because so many of these athletes are involved in games still, and especially the ones that are in the brackets, and how coaches are. It's like, hey, you can't be gone Sunday night. We need you back. We need you back here Sunday for practice or Sunday afternoon. There's just, that's the landscape has changed. And so Heisman has changed with it. And I think it's a marvelous idea, and I'm looking forward to checking it out. And I'm honored to be a part of it. Yeah.
Kind of squeezing the traditional Heisman festivities. They've kind of been squeezed down over the years. It used to be the Monday night gala, and it was the Sunday night, and now we're to the Sunday brunch. Of course, brunch is a great thing in Manhattan. Do you have a favorite Manhattan brunch spot besides the Marriott Marquis?
Oh, you know what? I don't get to New York often enough to be able to know anything. I know any place that's got Guinness on tap. I'm kind of I kind of lean that way, but that's kind of my brunch. But I know it'll be great. It's a great hotel, great staff, and they did a beautiful job last year, and I'm sure they will again this year.
For you listeners out there, my recommendation is Bubby's in Tribeca. Always a great spot for brunch. Okay, this is also the 50th anniversary of Archie Griffin's first Heisman Trophy, the 25th anniversary of Ron Dayne's Heisman Trophy in 1999, and the 10th anniversary of someone near and dear to your heart, Marcus Mariota from the University of Oregon. I wanted to ask you about how's it feel as an Oregon fan, not only seeing Marcus being honored. Of course, he won't be there. He's got prior commitments, but also Dillon Gabriel for the second straight year, a Heisman finalist from Oregon.
Yeah, I'm disappointed Marcus won't be there. I thought he might be able to squeeze it in, given how close DC is to. But I hadn't really looked at DC is to New York City, but I hadn't looked at the schedule. I'm glad he's not going to be there because it means he's still in the league and he's still viable in that regard. But he's such a good dude. I always love running into him. And one of my favorite Mariota stories is. We were doing the Heisman House commercials where they use the big house that you see in the fans see when they see all the commercials where they bring in, Jaden Daniels and make him be the, pledge initiate and all that. And so it was me, Marcus, and the Oregon Duck. And we're doing the Oregon fight song. And I'm playing a ukulele. And I don't know how to play an ukulele. But I'm pretending like I do, and we're singing the Oregon fight song. And Marcus, Marcus isn't that verbal, but he knew all the words. I didn't know all the words, but I'm very, I'll start acting like I do. We have a visitor, so we do this thing, and then the idea was they were going to get a real ukulele player and then show his fingers working it, cut away to it, so it looked like my fingers while we're doing that, and. It never made air because I think Marcus's agent thought that Marcus didn't shed Marcus in a good light, which is come on, it was funny. Yeah. But to your point, listen, Bo Nix last year, Dillon Gabriel this year. Dillon Gabriel, Chris, a great little story is when I lived in Hawaii from 85 to 2000, I covered the University of Hawaii. Well, the year that Ty Detmer won the Heisman, BYU was playing Hawaii that night. So Detmer was not in New York. He had to be anointed via satellite.
Right.
And I was standing right by him because I'm the little local television reporter and I'm getting ready to interview him. So I interviewed Ty Detmer, and BYU owned Hawaii, owned them. And that's their big rival. The big Polynesian rivalry was between BYU and Hawaii. And that night, led by Garrett Gabriel, Dylan Gabriel's dad, Hawaii punched BYU in the mouth and beat him, Lavelle Edwards and Ty Detmer and the Heisman for the first time in forever. So there's a lot of great local connections between Hawaii and the Heisman with the quarterbacks. And I wish Dylan Gabriel well. He's the best player on the best team, and that'll, that should serve him well come voting time. But there's 4 great nominees.
I didn't know you were up covering Hawaii up until 2000. I was at the Hawaii USC game in 1999, the first game of the June Jones era. I don't know if you were at that one. Yeah, I was there too. So.
100%. We got beat 66-3, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
And then June Jones damn near ran the table. I think he lost one more game and that wasn't the year he went to the Sugar Bowl. But I don't believe. No, I think
it was the greatest turnaround in NCAA history because they were winless the year before, and I think they went 9-3 or 9-4 by the end.
And then I think the next year or the year after that with Colt Brennan, they ended up going to the Sugar Bowl. When you really put that in perspective, that's one of the great coaching jobs of all time for a team of Hawaii's stature or lack of stature, so to speak, to make it to one of the top 4 bowl games before the BCS and all that. Although Matthew Stafford and Georgia slapped us around a little bit when we got there, but still to reach Atlanta was something special.
Yeah, that was an incredible accomplishment. Question I have a little bit. I don't know. I've been thinking about this. I've been asking people who come on the show. In this day and age of the transfer portal, you're an Oregon fan, right? And the Ducks are number 1, and they've got a shot at the national title, and they've got to win 4 games or 3 games. And do you think if the Ducks win, it will feel as good as it would have had they won in 2010?
Oh, no.
Right.
No, I think the game was a little simpler then in 2010. The Ducks were the little train that could back then. They had Chip Kelly. Nobody really knew who he was. He was bringing all this innovative offensive stuff. It was Little Eugene. It's not Little Eugene anymore. It's Big Eugene now. And we bulked up. Oregon has bulked up to play with the big boys, and listen, it's going to feel great if it happens, and it's a heck of a testament to Coach Lanning and his staff and those players, because I think it's to your question. I think it's going to be more meaningful, perhaps now, because the odds are greater against, I don't know if the odds are greater against, but the way the landscape has changed. So I think 2010 would have been like, wow. And I think this year it would be like, hell yeah.
You're right. Well, we've now gone through a full year of conference realignment, another year of the portal, first year of the 12-team playoff. We haven't finished the playoff, obviously, but how would you assess, how the sport has absorbed these chaotic changes that are, frankly, I think a bit disorienting to the average fan?
Well, I just think it's a sign of the times. It's like when we opened this conversation talking about, hey, we don't have, they used to have the Monday gala, and now then they had the dinner, and now they have the brunch, and it doesn't diminish the Heisman. Yeah. And it's the Heisman reacting. It's the Heisman calling an audible because the playing field has changed, and the playing field has changed for the players, and probably some of that should have happened a while back, and it wouldn't have been so drastic. And you went from 0 to 100, right? Instead of incrementally including these players more and giving them more agency over the sport that they were participating in and what they were bringing to the university. So it is what it is, and it's you can, if you spend all your time looking in the rearview mirror, you're going to run into something in front of you.
Great point. Do you have a favorite? Obviously, you're rooting for Oregon to win in this playoff, but do you think, I think they are the favorite to win the playoff, but who do you think is sort of either your number 2 choice to who you think might be the biggest threat to Oregon, or who you think might be a dark horse that no one's talking about?
Well, I don't think Georgia's a dark horse, but I think Georgia's, they've been there, they've done that. They punched Oregon in the mouth not that long ago. I think Oregon. Listen, Georgia, I think is to be one of the 12.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about SMU, but I certainly wouldn't look past SMU.
Yeah.
Boise State gave Oregon. I mean, Boise State had that game in hand against Oregon early in the season. Ohio State's got something to prove, not just to Oregon, but to everybody after all the abuse they took after the Michigan loss. So there's a lot of good football teams out there still. And, there's 12 of them. I wouldn't look past Dabo.
Right.
So you'll get some of that Dabo magic
That's
going.
Right. That's
and
right.
Who knows?
Yeah. And then finally, what do you think about, you've talked about Dylan Gabriel, about the other 3 Heisman finalists, Travis Hunter, Ashton Genty, Cam Ward. What's been your impression of those guys this year?
Well, I'll start with Genty because I watched him when he's probably the least known of the 4 and probably should be one of the best known because he's unbelievable and especially the way the running back has been quote unquote devalued over the years.
Yeah.
So Genty is the yards that he put up, and I saw him run against Oregon, so I don't want to hear it was against lesser competition.
Yeah.
Whether you're San Diego State or Oregon State or Oregon or whomever. These guys lace it up, and they're out there, they're hitting. So yeah, he's been a fabulous runner. His highlights are worth looking up. Cam Ward, I followed him at Washington State. The Pullman was sick to see him go. He's an offensive machine, and had they not stubbed their toe against Syracuse, they'd be one of the 12 teams, and we'd be talking about him in a different light because he'd still be on the big stage.
Yeah.
And then you got the kid in Colorado. I mean, what he's doing is unheard of. Going both ways and not just playing both ways, but making a difference. Pick sixes, catches for touchdown. He's fabulous, and he's got Dion behind him, and so that gives him the extra flair. He's always got a big smile on his face. I love hearing him being interviewed, and he's just he looks like a kid in a candy shop. And then you got Dylan Gabriel, who's he's the old man of the group, and he's taken more snaps than anybody or played more games than anybody, and I think he came to Oregon for a shot to win the Heisman, and that's what he's got, and that's all you can ask for is to be invited Saturday to New York City, and I can't wait because it's I think I know who the favorite is, but it wouldn't shock me if any of those 4 won.
Right. Speaking of Oregon quarterbacks, are there any more quarterbacks with 60 career starts that Oregon can bring in next year? They've done it 2 years in a row.
If they're out there, we're working on them right now.
The 2 most experienced quarterbacks of all time in college football both played for the Ducks, both Heisman finalists. Neil Everett, thanks for coming on the show again. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing your magic at work in New York City, and hope you have a great time with all the finalists and everyone else there.
Absolutely. Love being part of the Heisman family. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Neil.
This is Ron Dane, 1999 Heisman Trophy winner, and you're listening to the Heisman Trophy podcast.
Cory McCartney is an Atlanta-based writer now covering baseball, but also a longtime Heisman commentator for Sports Illustrated back when it was still illustrating things, and who is about as knowledgeable on the subject as they come. For good reason, he is the author of the book called The Heisman Trophy, the story of an American icon and its winners. One of the best books about the Heisman you will read. I think I remember I blurbed that one back in the day. Available on Amazon. Be sure to get it. Cory, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Yeah, you were one of the guys kind enough to give me a little review on that, so I appreciate it. We go way back in this process, and excited to see another Heisman vote come to an end. It's always a little bittersweet, and we are up against it.
Yeah, I think I always looked around at the Heisman commentary universe, and I always thought you were kind of a kindred spirit with me along the way, because I always thought people talked about the Heisman and never really focused on the right things. And one of the things I liked about your perspective is that you understand that what really matters when it comes to picking the winner is what Heisman voters think, and really nothing else, And the fact that some people mistake what should be for how things actually are. And yet every year there's always outrage, usually directed at the Heisman, for why a player doesn't make it to New York. So why is this process such a mystery to people when it's really just a simple election?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly the end of it where you're tying things all the way back to Jay Berwanger and you're picking out your guys along the way, whether it's Bo Jackson, Archie Griffin, and you're trying to tie somebody in this new era all the way back to those names and say, okay, well, who's really deserving of being part of this long legacy of this award? I think there's one way to look at it. I think the other one is a popularity contest. And I think, we've seen over the years, sometimes media can get behind somebody that maybe elevates them in a way. Then you look at the way the voting came out and say, well, wait a minute, that's not what I heard for the last couple of months about this particular candidate. So I think it can be really frustrating for some people to look at it outside from that end. I've always approached it from the end of, here's what history tells us is likely to happen, but that does not necessarily illustrate how I'm going to vote.
Right. And of course, when you look at the historical trends, you can kind of get a sense for what matters to Heisman voters. You've been away from the Heisman for a bit, covering baseball, and in the interim, there's been a lot of changes in college football. So I'm curious how your perspective on the award has changed, if at all.
No, not really. I mean, I think there are certainly some things that have changed for the award itself in the landscape of college football that I think are really interesting this year in particular. I mean, obviously you go back a couple of years and, we used to kind of look at the number of finalists and say, okay, well, what does that tell me about the vote? If there's 3 guys, if there's 4, 5, 6, what does that tell me about the way that the vote's going to be spread out? What does it tell me about that natural break in voting that we always used to use as that, precursor to how many guys were actually going to be in New York? That's no longer at play because we're set with 4 guys. Then there's the aspect of realignment. And so many of these guys now, we used to say, okay, well, this guy plays in this part of the country. So those, voters are probably going to lean that way. So many of these guys that we're talking about as finalists now play in conferences that quite literally stretch across the country. So I think there's all these things that we kind of used to use as the foundation pieces for how we kind of viewed this awards process and started to prognosticate on it that are really no longer at play.
Yeah. The sport is very tumultuous right now. Like you mentioned, conference realignment, NIL, the transfer portal, everything kind of chaotic. Does the Heisman is it in a position to be a bit of a bulwark against this chaos and kind of own its tradition and sort of be something for college football fans to latch onto if they're confused by everything going on?
I think so. And I think a lot of that is tied into the end that they will not go beyond the regular season. There's been steadfast, that we are not going to, consider anything that happens beyond the regular season games. And I think the fact that we have seen, us go from, a BCS situation where it was 1-2 to a 14 playoff and now a 12-team playoff. And you're still having this approach that, we only take into consideration what happens during the regular season. I think if you are someone who, it wants to tie into tradition and and kind of, pines for the yesteryear of college football and what it's been for decades beyond what we've seen the past couple of years, the Heisman is an institution that is staying within those bounds.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've noticed this year, and I don't know if it's because of the 12-team playoff, it seems like anecdotally, there's less Heisman discussion in the media this year. It seems like the playoff has kind of sucked up a lot of that energy. And I kind of worry that the Heisman ceremony and the week, just being 1 week ahead of the first round of the playoff, will kind of get sucked into that vortex of playoff discussion. How can the Heisman differentiate itself and kind of stay, kind of emerge from that discussion and get more attention as we go along?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? I mean, I think there's certainly the end of it so for the longest time, and I'm not saying that as Heisman voters that we're a slave to, a certain kind of candidate, but I think for a long time, people looked at it and said, okay, it's going to go to the, the quarterback who's on the number 1 team in the country. And if that was the case, then Dylan Gabriel would be getting a vote ready this weekend. But I think it's the real position of Heisman voters now. Go with the best player. And I think I have teenage sons. I have a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old. They have been Travis Hunter obsessed for months now. And the fact that we're going into this weekend talking about this dynamic playmaker who is the odds-on favorite to walk away with the trophy on Saturday, I think it is the Heisman differentiating itself from the the playoff process in those teams. So obviously there's going to be years where the guy who's the favorite is going to be playing in this 12-team playoff. But the fact that we have so much focus on a dynamic playmaker, a transcendent player like Travis Hunter, and you've got teenage boys that are, pining to be able to see this guy potentially on Saturday walk away with this award, I think really speaks to the position of the Heisman right now.
Do you think your sons being into the Heisman is representative of that age group? I know, they know dad's a Heisman guy, or were they into the Heisman because of you, or do you think that they just kind of follow it anyway?
I think both, and I think it's also the fact that NCAA football is back on the platforms that they play video games on. So they're doing their dynasty. They're trying to win the Heisman on the game. They're trying to create a player and have him go through the process and win the award. So I think that kind of ties into it too, right? It's like we didn't have that when we were kids, but certainly now that you can kind of go through that yourself and then watch it happen unfold on television, I think that's only going to help the award get back to at least when we were kids, when it felt like these guys were, these larger than life figures.
Yeah. And of course, nostalgia is one of those things that, nostalgia is kind of a hell of a drug, right? We think back at these guys and we're like, those guys are the greatest. The guys now aren't good. And in 10 years, we'll look back on these guys and they'll be venerable by comparison to the current guys. You talked a lot in your book about Heisman campaigns. And every year there's a story about Heisman campaigns written somewhere by someone in the media. And it's always some variation along the lines of they don't really work, or the implication is that they don't work, or that, when you talk to sports information directors, there's like this unwritten code that they can't say that they work. They have to sort of like be coy about it and say, well, we don't really matter. It's what the player does in the field, or all that really matters is what team is doing the best, and team success creates the individual success and all that kind of stuff. But corporations spend billions of dollars on marketing for a reason. It tends to work. I didn't see a lot of campaigning this year for the Heisman, and obviously someone's got to win it. So you can argue that the lack of campaigns doesn't mean there won't be a Heisman winner. But do you think that in this day and age that those kind of campaigns are effective still?
I think they certainly had their place. I mean, I still remember coming home one day from work and there was a package on my front porch and I picked it up and I was like, God, this thing feels like it's got weights in it. And let alone I open it up and it's Dan Persa in the 2 7-pound purple weights that Northwestern sent out that year. So, there's always going to be points like that where something really stands out. I remember getting the Ed Oliver bobblehead as well with him on the horse and all that kind of stuff. I mean, those are great, but I mean, we say there's no campaign this year, but you had the most polarizing and most popular coach in college football, Deion Sanders, on stage constantly talking about how great Travis Hunter is, and a travesty, that he wasn't a finalist for the Jim Thorpe Award. I think you had, in the fact that, Colorado spent so much money on their social media platforms and them producing content. I think there was a campaign at play. I just don't think it was traditionally the way that we think about pushing a guy for the award.
Yeah, I was never into the things like the bobbleheads, although I still think they have their effectiveness. But to me, the most effective Heisman campaign was just the reporter's notebook with the little picture on the back, because those guys are the guys who were voting, and those are the people taking. When you're a reporter going to covering the beat, and you're grabbing that notebook and putting it in your back pocket, and every time you open it up, you're seeing that player. I've always thought that those were just understated but effective campaigns. And so I don't really see a whole lot of those anymore. But going back to history of campaigns, which you covered a lot in your book, what do you think were some of the more interesting campaigns that stood out besides the Persa weightlifting, of course, which was a great doorstop for years?
Yeah. I mean, the Ty Detmer tie, I think that was a great one. You think about that one. Orlando Pace, when they had the pancake magnets growing up in Ohio, close to Columbus, definitely wanted to get my hands on one of those. But I think those are the ones that, to me, and obviously you mentioned with the Persa one there, I got a lot of notebooks. I remember getting tons of. You think about Jordan Love when they had the little heart candies for Valentine's Day that they had sent out with a notebook for him. So I think those were some of the ones that really stood out to me. But it's so funny that it just initially goes back to something as so simple as just sending out notes on a Sunday. That was the very first campaign that we saw with with Baker and Oregon State that long ago. To think it was something so simple that now would be so rudimentary when we think about how you push a candidate.
Yeah, and of course, back then you couldn't see all the candidates because people weren't on TV, so you needed the information. And now there's almost too much information, right? So it's really about how do you corral the information into the proper narrative. And it seems to me someone like Travis Hunter, he has a killer narrative, right? He's a two-way player. And it seems like, who knows who's going to win the Heisman, but he seems like the favorite. But Ashton Genty had an incredible year as well. But it's almost like in order to overcome that very unique thing about Travis Hunter, he would have had to really break some records. You think that's kind of a fair look at it?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're in the college football playoff because of Ashton Genty, right? If he doesn't have a season that rivals Barry Sanders, and I can't believe we're talking about that being a reality, they're not playing in this newfound version of the postseason. But it was going to take something monumental, and I've long. And I'm sure you might agree with this as well, maybe off the record, that a player from outside the power structure is probably not going to win this award. And I think the more that we've taken things and built these power conferences, I think it's that much more daunting for a guy to be able to do that. But I mean, think about it. We have not had a player from outside the power structure finish runner-up since Marshall Faulk in 1992. There's a very strong reality that Ashton Genty is going to do exactly that on Saturday. He may not walk away with an award, but I mean, you think about how long it's been since Ty Detmer and Andre Ware in 89-90. There has not been a guy like this, and we're talking about it happening potentially this weekend. I think that's a testament to what Genty's been able to accomplish this year.
Yeah, and also a testament to what Boise State has done over the years. I think that he doesn't get the same kind of run at the Heisman if Boise State hadn't laid the groundwork of building that respect for the program over the years. It's like it comes to fruition in weird ways down the road where you're, the question I have now is like, for the last, let's say since 2007, starting with Tim Tebow, we've been in the spread quarterback era for the Heisman Trophy, right? The spread quarterbacks have pretty much dominated, not only in the Heisman Trophy race, but in college football in general. We saw this huge explosion in offensive numbers. The average Heisman Trophy winning quarterback since Tim Tebow has averaged, at least 4,000 yards of offense, 43 total touchdowns. It almost seems like this has become the minimum threshold for Heisman consideration. You can go look at every one of the quarterbacks who are either finalists or who won the award, and it's like they've gotten above that threshold. But it also seems to me that the inclusion of people like Hunter and Genty in this year's race being kind of the two main candidates could be a harbinger of sorts that perhaps the era of the spread quarterback while it hasn't run its course, maybe it's plateaued a bit because it does seem like there's less offense in college football this year. There's not really any truly elite offenses, and maybe that's because of the portal and the difficulty with getting players up to speed, when you have them for 1 year. Do you think that we might be seeing more of a free-for-all position-wise when it comes to the Heisman, kind of like how we saw in the 80s and early 90s?
I hope so. I mean, I think it certainly adds a lot more interest when it's not just going to, everyone's perception that it's just going to go to the quarterback for the number one team. I mean, Dylan Gabriel, talk about those kind of threshold numbers. He didn't have those numbers, but if he had those numbers, if he's going, north of 4,200 yards and those 40 touchdowns that those quarterbacks have averaged, the last 12 quarterbacks, are we then talking about, no, you know what, it's going to be Dylan Gabriel, but he didn't have those numbers. The guy who did, who's another finalist, Cam Ward, is playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And no offense, Pop-Tarts Bowl is awesome. And I hope Cam Ward jumps out of the toaster at the end of the game as the MVP. But 4,100 yards, 36 passing TDs, 40 total touchdowns, those are the numbers, but he didn't have the season, in a season where everything's revolving around the college football playoff. But you had a guy who was incredibly dynamic, who is probably going to be the one that walks away with it.
And then one other exotic feature of this year's finalists is like you look through the four guys. Travis Hunter obviously was an elite recruit, highly respected coming out of high school, but he went to the FCS. So you have a guy who started in the FCS. You have Cam Ward, who started at the FCS at Incarnate Word in Texas before he went to Washington State. And you have Dylan Gabriel, who wasn't exactly everyone's All-American coming out of high school either. And then Ashton Genty, who wasn't like, 5-star recruit or wasn't considered an elite recruit. It's almost like this democratization of the process in the sense that people are coming from all kinds of different origins now to challenge for the Heisman.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to call it the island of misfit toys or anything like that, but everybody did kind of have their interesting paths to get here. And I think, I'm honestly, and you and I are people that have dove a lot into the numbers and, over the years and, the margins of victory and all that kind of stuff. And I think to me, the big thing with Travis Hunter, the other part of it is that he followed his coach to Colorado. And, the fact that you have that dynamic and how somewhat polarizing his coach can be, I'm really interested to see what the numbers are going to look like. Some great stories, but I'm always, that's always the first thing I'm looking at is after the award, okay, where does this rank historically? What do these numbers tell us? I can't wait to see this unfold.
And then what is your prediction for how the vote will unfold between those 4 finalists that we announced this past Monday?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, Travis Hunter's going to walk away with this thing. I think he's going to be followed by Ashton Genty, Dylan Gabriel, and Cam Ward, a distant 4th. I think what's really interesting, and when I talked about this before, is the fact that you have these conferences now that are so spread out across the country. Travis Hunter's going from the far west, South, Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, South. The only region he doesn't have a team in his conference is in the Northeast. I think he's going to win this thing by north of probably around 1,000 points, maybe get 675 or so first place votes. I'm not going to go out on a limb here because there's been some really narrow wins for non-QBs in the last 23 years. But I think this is going to be the biggest margin of victory for a non-quarterback since Ron Dayne in 1999.
Very interesting. That's actually, you brought up a great point in that answer, which is that the regionalism of the Heisman seems to be muted now because Dylan Gabriel plays in the Big Ten, like you said, goes from coast to coast. Cam Ward is in the ACC, which has its members on the West Coast, and then Ashton Genty plays in the Mountain West, but he's obviously on TV a lot, and then Travis Hunter in the Big 12 again. These are schools that are just all over the place. I mean, he plays against UCF, right? So pretty amazing stuff. The book is The Heisman Trophy, the story of an American icon and its winners. Really a great book, comprehensive book, I think, on a perspective of the Heisman, which is not typical and very informative. And so if anybody out there is interested in the Heisman Trophy, I recommend picking up this book. Maybe a great Christmas gift for dropping off to your own island of misfit toys. So, Cory, thanks for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll see you down the road.
All right, Chris. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, that's going to do it for episode 17 of season 2 of the official Heisman Trophy podcast. Next week, we will be talking to the 2024 Heisman Trophy winner as our featured guest. And before that, another special bonus pod featuring the 4 Heisman Trophy finalists on Saturday, the day of the 90th Heisman Trophy ceremony. See you then. The official Heisman Trophy podcast streams every Wednesday during the college football season and is hosted, co-produced, edited, and engineered by Chris Houston. Paul Goldberg is the executive producer and editor. Special shout out to Isaac Lowenkron, and big thanks to the Heisman Trophy Trust and its executive director Rob Whalen and associate director Tim Henning. The official Heisman Trophy podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find clips of our show on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Just go to @Heisman Trophy.